The Utah Utes are set to take on the San Diego State Aztecs at home this Saturday, but will the game turn out like it did last year, a loss for Utah, or will this Utah team come together and get a second win on their season? We're talking about on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. Appreciate you guys who have helped us reach over 400 subscribers as well as we continue to climb up to our goal of 500 on the before the USC game. Now, on today's show, we're going to be going over the game versus San Diego State, where Utah has the advantage in it, as well as talk a little bit about Cam Rising's play so far this season, and even talk about Junior Tafuna a little bit at the end. Utah's defensive tackle starting to get back on track and prove to be that dominant force that he is. But in order to talk about Junior and the rest of these guys, we're going to start it out with breaking out down the game. And in order to help us do that, bringing on friend of the show, Bryan Brown. And Bryan, this is a game that Bryan Brown of UteZone, as well as former host of this podcast too. But Bryan, this is an interesting game taking on San Diego State because it's one Utah lost last year. Is back. You could argue it was the most significant game of their season last year, as it was the true turning point in a way, because you start with Charlie Brewer and he doesn't perform well, and then Cam comes in and leads this incredible fourth quarter comeback that ends up tying the game. It goes into three overtimes, and then the Aztecs squeak out the win. So it was an unbelievable game last year, but this is not the same Aztecs team that we saw a year ago. The defensive player of the year for this team, as well as for their conference, is left. He's in the NFL now. New quarterback in there too. So, I mean, there's a reason the line for this game, we're going to talk about BetOnline a little bit later, but the line for this game from BetOnline is San Diego State at Utah, and San Diego State is minus 21. So it shows you how much Utah is favored in this matchup. And I think Utah is pretty much going to be able – there's a reason they're favored that much. I think Utah has the advantage at most of the key matchups on the field.
Yeah, well, we saw it last year in the game where once Utah had some, let's say, energy at the quarterback position, they were the better football team for a quarter and a half. And I know most Utah fans are hearing that and thinking like, oh no, Bryan went to BYU last week and suddenly he's a Cougar fan. But the reality is that if you look at that scope of the game, that segment where Cam was in, Utah was dominant. And football is such a brilliant sport because there are two sides, and those two sides hate each other, even when they're on the same team, but they are so interdependent upon one another. And I'm talking about the offense and the defense. Defenses know when offenses can cook and when offenses can't. You know, I think you've seen that last night. We were talking about the Broncos Seattle game last night, right? And you know, the big thing is let Russ cook. I think Seattle's defense doesn't want Geno to cook, right? Because they know that they can go out and win those games. And so when teams have that kind of, I guess, relationship and understanding about, hey, we're going to win, not turning the ball over, being able to do this, you know, and look, the funny part about being in practice is, you know, one of my favorite coaches, former Utah DB, Jeff Rogers, used to say all the time, he's got this like really gruff, scratchy, we go, eye in the sky doesn't lie. And for anybody who went to Murray High School, you probably know Coach Rogers. He's the best. The man has he's the most physically fit human being I've ever met. But it's the truth. You know, when you're a team that is practicing against those guys all the time, that film never lies. And they knew that the team was better off with Cam Rising being at quarterback, right? Brings the entire team, the entire unit some energy. And you talk about the losses, but also the cloud that's kind of hanging over this San Diego State program with the accusations surrounding former punter Matt Araiza. It's a lot to deal with. And I think, you know, it's funny. You and I do a bunch of high school games, right? And high school programs can be so up and down based on, like, if the starting quarterback breaks up with his girlfriend, right? Like little tiny stuff like that. They're not that far removed from that stage when you're in college. You're just a few years away. And so these kids are playing with a lot going on. On top of that, night game, Rice-Eccles Stadium, you know, that's an automatic 3 to 4 points, I think, when Vegas is involved. And so it all makes sense and it all correlates. And the other thing, too, is that this is a Utah football team that's now a season removed from the 4-game COVID stretch. This is not, that team that's still trying to figure things out. And while Cam Rising is still a guy that's only played in 13 games as a Ute now, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. It's this is a much more mature, much better, much improved Utah football team.
It is much better. They have an identity. They know who they are, and all those things are so important as well. So, I mean, we talked a lot. Look, Utah's going to should be able to run the ball here. I mean, if they can run the ball in Florida, they're going to be able to run it on San Diego State, who has a couple of nice pieces in the front seven, but not at the level to stop this Utah team. I think through the air as well, this Utah team can have success. And remind us, this is a San Diego State team already that's lost their first game of their season to the Arizona Wildcats. So a team Utah's going to see later in the season. And that was one where Arizona quarterback Jaden DeLora, he threw for 299 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. So I suspect the offense to be able to get going, they're going to be able to run it, and Cam's going to have success through the air. Defensively, I do think this team this year, and I think when a lot of people projecting how this San Diego State team was going to be, they looked at a guy in Braxton Burmeister who came over from Virginia Tech, and I think they thought they'd be a little bit more of a passing team, but that really hasn't been the case. Only thrown for 159 yards in 2 games so far on the season. There's not a single pass catcher over 50 yards on the season. It's been very spread out. So this is a team that's continued to get it done on the ground as they have in years past. Of course, guys like Rashad Penny coming out of there, but they have 550 yards on the ground. So to me, what's nice about this game, especially for Utah's defensive line, is it's just another step up in competition. Look, obviously the Florida game was very tough last week. Pretty easy for them to be able to win those one-on-one matchups up front. This week, you get a little bit tougher. You only have 2 returning starters on that San Diego State offensive line. So you have a couple guys who are still competent starters coming in there, getting their reps, but it's still where Utah should have the edge, still stopping the rush. But this is what they do best because I do think Utah's secondary is going to be locked down on the back end. So how do you feel like the front seven is going to perform this week?
Well, that's Utah's bread and butter too, right? They go into every single game with number one being stop the run, and so that's what they're going to focus on. You're also going up against the San Diego State program that's led by Brady Hoke. Brady Hoke's never been known for having super explosive, pass-heavy, risky offenses, right? Like even the years when he was at Michigan with old shoelace himself, Denard Robinson, it was a run-based offense, and so that's what he wants to do. I think that's where last year San Diego State was able to get some. Well, they if we're being honest, they got that game kind of on some fluky plays and on some gashing, but initially the defense was very stout. I think on the flip side of it, you mentioned the Utah offense. Traditionally, Utah's done really well against 3-3-5s, right? And as an offensive lineman, I don't know how much you went up against it, but I loved that stack, right? Because that was an easy one where it's like, hey, we got it down and we got it back her. All we got to do is just combo this all day. Now, where it gets confusing is the movement, right? But I think we've seen this University of Utah offensive line handle movement well, and so just to kind of bring it all together, I think this is a team and an opponent that sets up really well for Utah. I think, like you said, I think that front seven saw improvement last week. We saw that finally the appearance of Aliki Vamahi off the wanted poster in the post office and then the milk carton now on the field and allows Junior Tafuna to slide over to that 3-tech, play so much better, right? And we're seeing better run fit from Mo Diabate. And these are the things that, and that's a big thing for Mo, right? Like he's really got to engage up here because I think, Utah's not going to hang around and wait for him to get with the program. If he doesn't want to do the run fit and play the scheme that he wants to do, they're going to find somebody who does. And Andrew Mataafa has seemed much more reliable. I don't know that he's the game changer in terms of athleticism that Mo is. But that front seven's going to get the job done. It just depends on who it is that steps up and wants to do it. I thought Lander Barton was a guy who did a much better job last week, right? And now it's just the new guys. We talk about them. Jonah Ellis, Connor O'Toole, those guys on the edge. I thought Mickey Sungutaranga did a great job. Had the tip on the interception for Junior. The little the assist there. We'll call it the CP3 for Junior's pick. But sorry, Jazz fans. I try to go modern. I never know when I'm too old to be making references, but this is just a long-winded way of saying this is a good matchup for Utah, and so the everything about the spread and the other thing too is like I think this Utah team still has a bad taste in their mouth, right? And we saw last week that was a team with some heavy legs, and you could tell that the coach has gotten in them. I'd heard from people like yeah, it had been some really rough, they'd really gotten their gum chewed. We'll say it that way.
Good word choice.
Yes. But this is a team that really does have high expectations. I think they know they didn't play up to their expectations at Florida, and so they've got something to prove. And I think we saw Cam Rising settle in. We can talk about this all day. Just everything that we saw in the SUU game that leads me to think that this is going to be a much better performance.
Yeah, and you going to Mo Diabate, I think when you're looking at a guy named Andrew Matafa, like you said, he has a good understanding of the system, but just look at plays Mo Diabate makes. The very first defensive play for Utah, he comes, meets the pulling center in the hole, stands him up, and still makes the tackle, basically tackles both guys. Then you get the first down from the pass interference. So the second first down of the drive, he comes down and absolutely lays the wood, stops the back dead in his tracks. So that's the potential with a guy like Diabate and why you continue to roll with him as well. And it's also fun to see a guy like Connor O'Toole lead this team in tackles with 5 on last Saturday. So it's fun to see that defensive improvement. And it's going to be fun to see if they continue to do it against the Aztecs this Saturday. We're going to talk about how Cam Rising is going to factor into this game, and as well as how he's been through 2 games this season. But first, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your football, being pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening weeks of games. Guys, how great is it to have football back on all fronts and levels, Saturdays and Sundays? It's awesome just to sit on the couch, sit back, and watch everything play out. So make sure you guys head over to BetOnline to get in on some of that action and bet on some of the great slate of games coming up at the NFL and college level. And as well, you guys can head over there, bet on MLB, MMA, boxing, even golf. There's still lots of options out there for you guys to go to BetOnline. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Bryan, I talked about it a little bit, just keeping with BetOnline. San Diego State at Utah. Utah is obviously heavily favored in this one. I feel good about Utah in that minus 21. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair spread. We didn't really talk about the spread on the SUU game. Utah traditionally hasn't been good in those games, but 73 points, that's a lot. Shout out to the Fort Douglas MPs for holding the record of, I believe it was 129 in 1905. Wow. Yeah, and they had spots, I think 1 through 4, if I'm not mistaken, but you can see why, Utah literally ran Fort Douglas out of the building and out of college football altogether because they couldn't handle it. Me getting detoured on historical relevance here, but this offense is still explosive. And look, I know that Kyle Whittingham's calling out the wide receiver core. You could see it in Devon Bailey's body language. He is, I don't know if frustrated is the right term. But the energy just wasn't there on Saturday, yeah. and I don't blame him. This is a tough offense when you're not getting the ball and all you can do is block. And we've seen it with Solomon Enos. He's really engaged in becoming a better blocker and trying to be a better creator for his teammates. We saw Money Parks really put his stamp on the game in the second half, and that's part of the reason why I love those kinds of games is I get to see those second and third stringers. Let's talk about how great the second string offensive line was. Yes. You know what I mean? Zero Way Williams, huge steps forward. Loved what I saw with him. I think some people might have been surprised to see Tanoa Tongiai at the guard position. I'd heard a little bit about that in fall camp, and heard that was the way to help him development. Same with Jaron Kump, right? And so we finally see that Utah really is 10 deep, like they've been talking about, and that, that's always a positive development. And so you have to wonder in the back of your mind if maybe some of those starters aren't thinking well, I'm going to say this. They're not thinking that way, but we talked about it. This is a team that's going to have a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to come out and fight. And so if the spread's 21, they're probably going to try and push it to 30 or 35, just because they want to get in and they want to. I just had this feeling, JT, that this team's got this kind of chip on their shoulder where they're really upset with how the narrative has come both from the coaching staff and from everybody else following that Florida game, and they want to make a presence. And I think there is something to wanting to play so hard and play so well that you can get your teammates into the game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them overcome that. I guess here's my question for you, JT: under 4 touchdowns for the wide receiving core.
For this game, I'll take the under.
Okay.
Would you go over?
I'm not sure, because I think this is a tough one, right? Because this is a game where you expect the run game to be really proficient. right? Like Utah is super strong up front, and you see them match up against a 3-3-5. That's a defense that's designed to stop the pass as much as anything and create chaos. You would think that like Tavion Thomas, Jalen Glover, Mekhi Bernard, Chris Curry, that four-headed monster that we're now starting to see should feed, right?
Yes, no, 100%. Those guys should get going. And if you had said, I'll say this as well, if you had said over 4 touchdowns for the pass catchers, so we can group in the tight ends as well, then I'd probably go over. But it's just the receivers that holds me up there. And before we jump into Cam, I'll just say this. You are 100% right with the chip being on this shoulder. I talked with Braden Daniels yesterday. I talked with Mekhi Bernard as well yesterday for practice. You can just kind of tell they're still ticked off about how things have played out. And they know that they beat down an opponent they easily should have destroyed. And honestly, they should win handily this weekend as well. But it's just another opportunity to go out there and continue to prove that you did belong in that top 10. You are one of the best teams in the country. And it's not about what the rankings say. I think for them, it's just like they know they belong out there. So they want to show people that that's how it is. And, one of the places that does start is the quarterback position. And this is what has been the topic all week is the wide receivers had their lack of production so far as they were expected to be the breakout group. And, Kyle Whittingham's talked about, he wants to see more separation from those guys. And that's part of it. But I also think part of the blame does go to Cam Rising. And I think Cam is a guy who I had really high expectations for him coming into the season. I thought he was going to I thought he was the one who was going to leave the Florida game with the Heisman moments. Instead, it was Anthony Richardson. And I think Cam still played a great game there, but you look at the biggest moments and the biggest plays of the game, those were still made by Anthony Richardson. He had the opportunity to make one of those plays late and just couldn't make it. Cam still played a really good game because Cam is a really good quarterback, but I think in terms of taking that leap and being one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country in terms of a Heisman contender, all those things, I think he has come up a little bit short. And some of that is due to accuracy. I did think we talked about the improved arm strength and all of that. And that's just something we hadn't really seen this year. To me, it's just felt like a continuation of the quarterback we saw last year rather than a huge improvement. He just looks like the same guy to me, which is a really good quarterback, but just not one of the top 3 guys in college football. Like I think a lot of people thought he had a chance to be because of some of that offseason hype, but whether it be for locking on to reads or just missing guys or just not being on the same page, I have been a little disappointed by Cam Rising.
Yeah, and I think some of that is on us, right? Because he looked so good in the spring and he had such a phenomenal year last year, but like you don't really conflate with it like how little football he's actually played. He's played in according to the UtahUtes.com, it says 16 games. But it says that he's only played in 3 games in 2022. So I'm assuming they're counting the Rose Bowl as one of those games. So that anyways, it doesn't matter. Like he's only started in 12 or 13, right? That I can count because he didn't start against BYU and he didn't start against Weber State and he didn't start against San Diego State. So when you think about it, like he's got 1 season under his belt, and I know that sounds like a lot to people, but this is a complex offense with Utah, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of layers to it, and even when you're sitting in the booth next to Andy Ludwig, it is a different ball game, and I showcase how hard it is to play quarterback in my film breakdown of that final play of the Florida game. There are multiple pre-snap reads that you have to go through. You have to make sure you're counting guys on either side of the line of scrimmage, knowing what your run audibles are, right? Especially if it's a check with me, meaning where you call multiple plays or multiple routes in the huddle, right? And so there is a lot to it. And I think what Cam is doing is he is thinking things through way too much and not being the guy that is just that instinctual, I want to say gunslinger, right? That was what was so great about him in San Diego State. He just came out, not gunslinger in terms of like, I'm just going to throw it and force it in there, but a gunslinger in the sense of like, I know what I'm going to do and I'm going to go do it, and his instinctual decision-making has always been his biggest strength, in my opinion. And you can see him, he's thinking through his reads, he's thinking through things too much. And sometimes that comes from overcoaching, right? Where and we've seen it in the past with Whittingham quarterbacks where they emphasize so much not turning the ball over that guys start to hesitate and think. And when you hesitate, that gets your mechanics off. That means your accuracy's off. It's not a question of protection, right? It's not a question of not knowing the scheme. It's what are we doing mentally to make sure that Cam Rising feels comfortable doing what he's doing. It's one of the reasons why I felt like the coaching and the game plan for last week was one of the, I'll say, least likable that I've seen at Utah in a long time.
Yeah, there were a lot of miscommunications. It still felt like, especially early on, it took this offense a little bit to get going in the first quarter. There were still some decisions and things like when Utah had, I believe it was a chop block penalty. It was 1st and 25, and then you get Cam right away. He's just going to the tight ends. And so even on the 3rd down one, it was just like needed to wait a little bit longer for those to develop. And he did get dropped on that play sack. So Tawalemea just getting a little too locked on when the guy crossed his face rather than picking up the twist. But like you said, there's just still a couple of those instances. And that's what's nice about them happening so young in the season, too, is his opportunity to learn and grow from them. It's not like Cam Rising is he's playing good football. I think in part of that is the expectations we set for him. He's just not playing at that level of maybe that we unfairly placed him at.
Yeah, well, it's just time, and you mentioned Satawa, like that's a guy that's been in essence a 3-year starter, right? But now he's playing a new position, so you talk about it when a guy crosses your face, it's different when you're a tackle, right? Like when you're a guard, primary, like you're protecting the inside, so if a guy's crossing your face, like it's just a different thing. You go with it, right? Because you know that the center is either going to help the other guard or he's picking up the mic, right? And people are like, what mic? Like the one in front of you? No, the linebacker, right? But at tackle, it's much different. You've got to be ready with the hand pass and things like that. So there are still these little nuances that guys are working out. But I think the difference is that this is a team that's good enough and talented enough and executing at a high enough level to where it's not affecting them, right? You still, like, I think everybody who watched the game on Saturday can say, like, that wasn't Utah's best effort, and they still put up 73 points, right?
Yeah, no, it's 100% true that they did. And especially because you said, like, the start, I think wasn't it Josh Newman who tweeted out the 45-point spread? Like, that seems like a lofty number right now. And then, boom, they exploded past it.
Had it by halftime.
Yeah. Yeah, just wild stuff. So it will be fun to see how Cam, and I'll ask you this before we leave off this topic. Do you think this is the week the wide receivers break out then?
No. And it's just, so that's the hard part about this stuff, right? It's all about matchups. And when I love saying this, and credit to Stephen Godfrey, who kind of opened my eyes to it. Coaches are always talking to somebody else, never to the fans in those press conferences. What Kyle Whittingham is doing is he's seen the film against Florida. He's seen where his wide receivers were at against some of the most athletic defensive backs, and he's getting them ready for Pac-12 conference play because they know that every single team in this conference has seen way too much of Brant Kuithe and Dalton Kincaid, and so he knows those guys need to get ready, need to get going. And one of the big things with Devon Vele, you can see the athleticism, right? He's a 6'5" guy who's returning punts. It's there. Like, he's very shifty, right? So why aren't you getting open more? Why aren't you doing more to create for yourself? Why aren't you being the Keyshawn, give me the bleeping ball, kind of receiver that everybody expects you to be? Now's the time to get into him and push him mentally, right? And so I think what they'll do is they'll push those guys this week and really ask a lot of them. But I don't think it means that that's going to translate to them having an explosive game, because the game plan is against San Diego State should be to run the ball, Now, maybe you'll see them have some big explosive plays, and maybe you'll try to get Jalen Dixon on some routes and things like that. It always happens that I say this and then they go and totally flip the game plan on me. But I think, if you're going based on the opponent, like, Utah's best strength is to run the ball, But you need to be ready, because this 9-game slate, and we're seeing it now, Oregon State becoming a beast of a program, right? That's going to be a tough team. Washington State is much better defensively than I think anybody expected them to be. And you're going to see a variety of looks and a variety of coverages from these teams. That's what I've always loved about the Pac-12, is it's just very unique. But so you have to be ready. This is, like you said, these are the games where you have to be ready and have to get ready for that conference slate. And so I think that's the bigger push. Now, does it translate to Cam actually throwing the ball to the wide receivers? Maybe. Mm-hmm. But I still think that we're going to, see 200, 300 yards on the ground first.
Yeah, I do as well. And I think it is something where, like you said, we're going to see maybe Devon goes. I think Devon maybe will have his best game of the season this week, but it still won't be over 100 yards. Maybe it's just like 60. Maybe it's even 50. Just something like step in the right direction. Maybe we see Money make a couple more plays. So we'll just see these guys do a couple more things. So we're going to come out and talk about one last thing relating to, you mentioned Utah's upcoming schedule. I think there's an interesting thing we can talk about there in a second. But first, I want to tell you guys about Intercap Lending. There is a reason that no lender helps more families in Utah with their mortgage deals. Intercap gets deals done quick and simple process. Intercap closes loans 2 weeks faster than the industry average. And though fast is great, the ultimate goal is to create a stress-free home loan process. And that is what Locked On's personal loan officer, Steve Carter, has delivered to hundreds of Locked On listeners, including Locked On's founder, David Locke. And if he can help keep David on track, he can help keep you guys on track as well. And though Intercap is new to the Locked On Utes podcast, it's not new to helping and assisting customers' mortgage needs. They've been doing so since 1978. That's 43 years of experience. And Steve Carter's been providing Locked On listeners with the best experience since 2018. Intercap is headquartered here in Utah, but licensed to help with all your mortgage needs in 40 states. So give Steve a call. His direct number is 385-800-8528. You will not find a more responsive loan officer. Once again, Steve's direct number, 385-800-8528. NMLS number is 190465. So make sure you guys head over to www.intercaplending.com or give Steve a call. So, Bryan, you mentioned something really interesting with this Utah team. You're preparing for the gauntlet that is Pac-12 play. And I do think it's funny how the schedule breaks for this Utah team, because you look at it and look, San Diego, after the Florida game was like started up here, obviously. I mean, arguably the toughest opponent you're going to play all season. We'll see how USC looks when they come to Rice Eccles, especially considering home opener on the road. I do think the Florida game is a tougher game than the USC game. At the moment, we'll wait and see, because Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison obviously look pretty good right now. But you look at the Southern Utah game, the level of competition's here. Then you look at San Diego State. But then from there, when you start to enter Pac-12 play, then you get Arizona State, then Oregon State, then UCLA going to UCLA, and then USC. I really think it's a nice, steady climb for Utah going into that game, with each team just a little bit better each step of the way. That could really set them up to close out the season on a strong run.
Yeah, and it's that October stretch is a really tough stretch, as you talked about. I don't think that Arizona State's going to be the thorn in the side of Utah that it's been in years past. That program's just in a lot of trouble. There's no other way to get around it, and I don't think Emory Jones is the answer for them. And I think a team that's kind of in disarray, Utah can feast on those. But like you mentioned, Oregon State, one of the best teams up front. Utah struggled with them last year, especially on the defensive line. So that's a critical matchup for Utah. It's an opportunity for the defensive line to show a lot of growth too, right? There's still a lot of criticism around that group. I think you and I are maybe a little bit higher on what we saw in terms of our film review and what we saw during the game than maybe some other people. But again, that's an opportunity to show your improvement as a team, right? Mm-hmm. And this is still a young defensive line too. I have to remind myself of that. We got a lot of guys that have never started before until this year. So again, then you've got UCLA. I'm not going to say that UCLA is back. But that's a team that looks like it's really buying into the DTR, movement, and they believe in DTR, and you can see that he's made some improvement. And then, Caleb Williams, Jordan Addison are going to give you a handful no matter what. And then even after that, you have Washington State, who we've seen, goes on the road, wins a huge game against Wisconsin, and does it with defense too, right? That's the part where you're just and we still haven't seen the best of quarterback, Cameron Ward. Is it Cameron Ward?
From Washington State. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were talking about someone else, but yes.
Listen, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what I'm thinking or talking about, JT. So nobody's going to judge you there. Yeah. But again, we haven't seen our best from Cameron Ward, and by that point in October, I believe it's October 27th. That could be the game of the conference slate. To that point, because if both of those teams, are either
Thursday night game too.
Yeah, so there's a lot to look forward to in this October slate, and like you said, you really build up, to that high level, and then you jump to Oregon in November, and it's before we know it, the season is over, and now I'm feeling sad.
Well, we're only 2 games in, so we got a long time and a lot of Utah football left to be played. So we're in a good position there. Before we get out of here, want to give some quick love to Junior Tafuna. I thought he was outstanding on Saturday's game. I know he's a guy you're really high on as well, Bryan. And you just look at that first game, he had to play just basically nose tackle a lot, play that one technique where he's the guy taking on all those double teams a lot. And then he was able to shift back out to 3 tech where he is so disruptive and so difficult to block one-on-one. And I think in that Florida game, he got really worn down versus against Southern Utah. He had that energy, and that energy is what allowed him to – there was a pass interference on JT Broughton on the third offensive play of the game for Southern Utah, but Tafuna was in the backfield making a hit. We saw him in the backfield multiple other times, and he still had Dalton Kincaid's hurdle was incredible. The best play a Utah player made that day to me was Junior Tafuna's interception. When you look at him, took on a double team at first, then the guard left, worked to the second level, I believe, and then he's one-on-one with the center, throws the center out of the way, sees the ball in the air, sprints about 7 yards, and then makes the diving interception. There's not many 300-pound guys that could make that play, and even Kyle Whittingham said he played linebacker in high school, so you can just see that elite athleticism there. But Utah's disruptive defensive force along their defensive line in Junior Tafuna is back, and I think it's good to see him hitting his stride back in his natural position.
100%. Have to wonder if maybe it was the haircut that did it, but whatever it was, glad to see him playing to his strength, I think. And really, that's the hardest part about it is that you want to see these guys succeed where they're really good, right? And I think we've seen some things from Simote Pepa, who I've been kind of clamoring for to see the field for a while, and I get it. Like, you have certain requirements that you want guys to meet, both, physically in terms of, weight, height, whatever it is, in order to see the field. But some guys are just outside the mold. And I think Simote proved, he's a guy that needs to get out on that field, and he's a guy that needs to be out there and helping this defense, because his size, his strength, the way that he plays, he's a game changer. And if nothing else, Simote can do the things that allows Junior to be that freak out there in the 3 technique, like, who doesn't want to freak at the 3 technique?
Can't go wrong with a freak at 3 technique, just like you can't go wrong when Bryan Brown joins you on the show. Huge thanks to Bryan. Always a great time. Make sure you guys follow him at Twitter at BrownBearSLC. Block podcast once a week as well, coming at you guys. And any other things you're working on, Bryan?
Who knows? I mean, I'm going to see you on Friday night. Like, yes, I'm always excited to get on KSL Rewind and do that. I hope everybody's tuning in and enjoying the broadcasts. We try to make it fun, and man, the games have been incredible. So I love doing that with you on Fridays, and you never know with me. I always got something going on.
Always up to something. That's what makes it fun. We'll appreciate you guys for tuning into another edition of Locked On Utes. Keep it with us the rest of the week as we'll continue to break down the Utes taking on the San Diego State Aztecs at home Saturday at 8 o'clock. It is going to be a fantastic night, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Utes.